In a world that often measures success in numbers and possessions, it becomes dangerously easy to fall into the trap of believing that self-worth is something we earn, something we trade for achievement, money, or social status. But self-worth is not a transaction. It is not a commodity to be bought, sold, or negotiated. It is inherent, an unshakable truth that exists simply because we exist. Yet every day, subtle messages tell us otherwise. They whisper that we are only as good as our last accomplishment, only as valuable as the numbers in our bank account, only as worthy as the labels we wear or the titles we carry. It's a dangerous lie, one that sinks into our bones and affects how we see ourselves and how we show up in the world. When we believe that worth must be earned, we start living as if we are constantly on trial. Every conversation becomes an opportunity to prove ourselves. Every failure feels catastrophic because it threatens not just our goals, but our very sense of being enough. We become addicted to validation, chasing achievements and accolades in the hope that they will finally silence the inner voice that asks, "Am I good enough?" But no paycheck, no award, no applause can ever answer that question in a lasting way. Because worthiness is not found outside of us. It is something we must recognize and claim for ourselves. This transactional mindset doesn't just hurt individuals, it harms entire communities. It creates a culture of comparison and scarcity, where people are valued for what they can produce or accumulate rather than for who they are. It builds walls instead of bridges. It rewards performance over authenticity and status over connection. And worst of all, it makes people invisible. Those who don't meet the arbitrary standards of success are often overlooked, dismissed, or disrespected. We forget that every person carries within them a story, a heart, a life that is just as sacred as any other. Reclaiming the truth that self-worth is non-negotiable requires deep, courageous work. It demands that we stand up to the voices, both external and internal, that try to convince us otherwise. It means daring to believe that we are enough, even when we are imperfect, even when we fall short, even when the world doesn't validate our existence in the ways we wish it would. It's about shifting from a mindset of earning love, belonging, and respect to one of recognizing that these things are not prizes to be won, but rights that come with being human. Living from a place of unconditional worth changes everything. It frees us to be vulnerable, to take risks, to be authentic. It invites us to show up fully without hiding behind masks of achievement or possessions. It allows us to connect with others from a place of genuine empathy rather than competition. And it gives us the resilience to face failure without letting it define us. Self-worth that is not tied to transactions teaches us how to belong to ourselves first. It teaches us to root our value not in fleeting successes, but in something deeper, something unshakable. It reminds us that we are worthy not because of what we have or what we do, but because of who we are. And when we live from that place, we help others remember their own worth too. We create a culture where respect and dignity are not earned, but honored, where people are seen for their humanity rather than their achievements, where connection matters more than currency. In the end, the truth remains, we are worthy, always have been, always will be. No transaction necessary. The shame of scarcity is a quiet, heavy burden that so many people carry, often without ever speaking about it. It's the feeling that no matter what you do, no matter how hard you try, it will never be enough. Not enough money, not enough success, not enough recognition, not enough to be seen and valued in a world that measures worth in external symbols. Scarcity isn't just about not having material things. It's about the deeper, more painful belief that you yourself are lacking, that there is something fundamentally wrong or inadequate about you. It becomes a lens through which you see everything, coloring your experiences with fear, insecurity, and self-doubt. In a culture obsessed with achievement and wealth, scarcity thrives. It whispers that respect must be earned through visible accomplishment, that love is conditional, and that belonging is reserved only for those who meet certain standards. When money becomes a symbol of value, Those without it often internalize the message that they are less important, less capable, less worthy. It is not just about economic struggle, it becomes a personal indictment. The gap between what I have and what I should have becomes the measure of who I am versus who I should be. And that gap feels endless, impossible to close. Scarcity, shame, isolates. It makes people hide their struggles out of fear of judgment. It convinces them that their hardships are personal failures rather than reflections of larger systems of inequality or chance. This shame is deeply corrosive because it tells people that their circumstances are not just unfortunate, they are deserved. That if they were smarter, more talented, or worked harder, they would be in a different place. It dismisses all the invisible barriers people face and instead blames individuals for the wounds of a society that idolizes prosperity and punishes poverty. The pain of scarcity shame shows up in ways that are hard to talk about. It looks like avoiding social events because you're embarrassed about what you can afford. It looks like feeling small in conversations where others casually discuss luxuries that seem out of reach. It looks like overcompensating with material things to mask the insecurity that sits just beneath the surface. It looks like self-sabotage, believing so deeply that you are unworthy that you stop trying before you can fail. It festers in silence because we're taught not to name it, not to show it, to pretend that everything is fine even when the weight is crushing. Freeing from the shame of scarcity requires radical compassion, both for ourselves and for each other. It requires recognizing that worth is not measured by wealth and that struggles do not define a person's value. It means breaking the silence and naming the shame, calling it what it is so it no longer holds power in the dark. It means reaching out to others, not with judgment or pity, but with genuine empathy and solidarity. It demands that we challenge the narratives that equate having less with being less. The truth is, scarcity is a lie. There is no such thing as a person who is not enough. Every human being carries inherent dignity that cannot be diminished by circumstance. We must learn to look beyond the surface, beyond the status symbols and achievements, and see the humanity in each other, the hopes, the fears, the dreams, the resilience. We must build communities where people are valued for who they are, not for what they have, where connection is not contingent on success, and respect is not reserved for the privileged few. The shame of scarcity will continue to grow in silence and judgment, but it cannot survive empathy and courage. When we tell the truth about our experiences, when we refuse to measure ourselves or others by material standards, when we embrace the messy, imperfect beauty of being human, we reclaim our worth. And in doing so, we create space for others to reclaim theirs too. In a world where so much is valued by numbers, how much you earn, how much you own, how much you can show, choosing courage over currency is a radical act. It's choosing to live from your values instead of chasing validation. It's standing firm in your worth, even when society tries to convince you that you need more, that you need to be more, to matter. Courage over currency means resisting the idea that success is measured in financial wealth alone, and instead rooting your life in purpose, integrity, and authenticity. It's about valuing the unseen over the shiny, the meaningful over the material. Courage is waking up every day and showing up fully, even when you feel like you have less to offer than the world demands. It's daring to believe that your voice, your ideas, your compassion, and your art are valuable, even if they don't come with a big paycheck or a flashy title. Courage is choosing to follow a calling that speaks to your soul rather than one that simply fattens your wallet. It's choosing to live a life that feels right rather than one that just looks right from the outside. It's knowing that the deepest kind of success cannot be deposited in a bank account. When we place currency above all else, fear tends to run the show. Fear of not having enough, fear of being left behind, fear of being judged or dismissed. These fears can keep people trapped in jobs they hate, relationships that feel hollow, and lifestyles that look good on social media but feel empty inside. The cost of valuing currency over courage is often authenticity. People shrink themselves to fit molds they never chose, abandoning their dreams and silencing their true selves in exchange for a sense of security or approval. And yet that security is often fragile and fleeting, leaving people wondering why they feel so lost even after checking all the right boxes. Choosing courage over currency doesn't mean rejecting money or denying its importance. We all need resources to live and to care for ourselves and those we love. But it does mean refusing to let money be the primary measure of your success or your self-worth. It means understanding that financial wealth is just one part of life and not necessarily the most important part. It's recognizing that some of the richest lives are lived not in mansions, but in moments. Moments of connection, of creation, of contribution, of choosing what is right over what is easy. Courage is being willing to risk failure, embarrassment, and even poverty in pursuit of something bigger than yourself. It's being willing to disappoint others in order to stay true to yourself. It's accepting that you might be misunderstood, underestimated, or even rejected because you chose the road less traveled. And it's understanding that the reward for this courage isn't always immediate success or recognition. Often the reward is something quieter but infinitely more sustaining, peace of mind, a deep sense of integrity, a life that feels whole. The people who inspire the most lasting change, the ones who leave true legacies, are rarely the ones who simply accumulated the most wealth. They are the ones who had the courage to dream boldly, to live authentically, to stand up when it was easier to stay silent. They chose to measure their lives not by what they could amass, but by what they could create, who they could uplift, and how they could stay true to their core. Courage over currency is not the easy path. It asks for sacrifice, vulnerability, and resilience. It demands that you trust yourself even when the road is unclear. But it offers something that money can never buy, a life that feels deeply, undeniably your own. In the end, living with courage is the greatest form of wealth there is. The true measure of respect has nothing to do with wealth, titles, or outward appearances. It has everything to do with how we see and treat one another at the most fundamental human level. Respect is not something we reserve for those who have achieved great financial success or social status. It is not a prize that must be earned through performance or possessions. True respect is a recognition of inherent worth, the acknowledgement that every person has value simply because they exist. It requires us to look beyond the surface, beyond the societal markers of importance, and see the shared humanity that binds us all together. In many places, respect has been confused with admiration for power, influence, or wealth. People often treat others based on what they think they can gain or lose in the interaction. But real respect does not calculate or categorize. It does not change based on someone's salary, clothing, car, or address. It remains steady because it is rooted in empathy and compassion, not judgment or comparison. It says, I see you, I honor your dignity, I recognize your humanity without asking for credentials or proof. The true measure of respect shows up in the quiet moments when no one is watching. It's in how we speak to the person serving our coffee just as much as how we speak to a CEO. It's in whether we listen when someone without power has something to say. It's in whether we believe someone's story without needing them to impress us first. Respect is about how we show up for people when there is nothing to gain. It is about kindness, patience, and a willingness to see the full person in front of us rather than reducing them to a stereotype or a transaction. When we only offer respect to those who meet certain conditions, those who are wealthy enough, successful enough, attractive enough, we create a culture of fear and insecurity. People learn that their value is conditional and fragile, dependent on constant achievement or external validation. They become trapped in cycles of proving and performing, afraid that a slip or a loss will cost them not just opportunities, but their very sense of being seen and valued. This conditionality is not only harmful to individuals, it fractures communities and relationships. It makes connection shallow and precarious rather than deep and sustaining. True respect builds stronger, more resilient communities because it fosters trust and belonging. When people know that they will be treated with dignity no matter their circumstances, they are more willing to be vulnerable, to take risks, to contribute in meaningful ways. They do not have to waste energy pretending to be something they are not or living in fear of being cast out if they falter. They can grow, heal, and connect authentically. Measuring respect by true standards also challenges the structures of inequality that reward a few and diminish the many. It invites us to recognize and challenge the biases that tell us some lives are more valuable than others. It asks us to be deliberate in extending dignity to everyone, to question who we uplift, who we overlook, and why. It reminds us that the worth of a life cannot be tallied by what is accumulated or achieved, but is found in the simple, profound reality of being human. Choosing to measure respect by empathy rather than status is not always easy. It demands awareness, humility, and often a willingness to unlearn deeply ingrained ideas. But it is necessary if we want to live in a world where dignity is not a privilege but a right, where people are not ranked but embraced, where success is not a prerequisite for being treated with basic human decency. At its core, the true measure of respect is about how much space we make for others to be fully human, imperfect, vulnerable, resilient, and worthy just as they are. It is one of the greatest acts of courage and love we can offer, and it has the power to transform not just individuals but entire cultures.